Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Prepare to be disturbed as we unveil a collection of chilling images that will test the boundaries of your belief. These aren't your typical spooky photos. These alleged encounters with demonic entities are so unsettling, they'll leave you questioning the very nature of reality. From shadowy figures lurking in the darkness to terrifying apparitions caught on camera, these images will send shivers down your spine and leave you with a lingering sense of unease. Are these genuine glimpses into the demonic realm, or are they merely the products of overactive imaginations? Brace yourself for a journey into the unknown, where the line between the real and the supernatural blurs.
William Thomas Stead. Born in 1849, William Thomas Stead was the son of Congregationalist minister, and at the age of 22, he was appointed as editor of the Northern Echo, a regional newspaper in Darlington. This British medium, Richard Borsonov, featured a photo of W.T. Stead and a spirit. Or a demon. One of the two, both pretty terrifying. While William was investigating a spiritual case, he took this photo with what's supposed to be the spirit of Pete Botha. Now, the reason many believe that maybe the spirit is evil is that Stead later on died in the Titanic. He boarded the ship to take part in a peace congress at Carnegie Hall, and survivors mentioned William Thomas Stead a few times. Apparently at dinner, he was chatting his way throughout the entire 11-course meal, recounting exciting, spooky times in his life, even mentioning a cursed mummy that he encountered at the British Museum once. That's a little odd for table talk. He even gave his life jacket to another passenger that night too. Stead would often claim that he would one day pass due to hanging or to drowning. And right before he was to be awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize, he passed away due to the latter. Was he cursed? I believe so, to be honest with you. What do you guys think? Number 9, the demonic boy photograph. It doesn't matter where or when, but odds are you've probably seen this photo at some point. All those late nights when you're scrolling through Reddit, you've probably seen this at some point. I know I have, and every time I see it, I'm kind of like, it looks pretty real. It's pretty haunting. You know when you see a photo, sometimes you get bad vibes, like it registers in your brain as something scary and real. Like you want to find something that looks fake about the photo, but it's tough. This photo was taken inside the Amityville house in 1976. It appears to be a young boy or ghost, spirit, demon, whatever, with glowing white eyes. It was taken with automatic cameras equipped with infrared. And it makes it even creepier that the boy looks like he's peeking around the corner. Like he knew something was coming almost, he didn't want to get caught. That's the creepiest part here. A photographer named Gene Campbell took it, and Gene was working with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren at the time. Yeah, the famous duo now rocking the big screen Conjuring universe. This was a real thing. They were on this case in real life. This photo was revealed 3 years after it was taken, and it was revealed on the Merv Griffin show. Imagine seeing this on a show, like Jimmy Kimmel whips this out. It's like, hey, we're gonna play Plinko. Check out this demon. Many believe this is the ghost of John DeFeo, one of the boys who lived there prior during the 1974 event. Now we're still trying to cover this one, but what do you guys think? Is this an elaborate hoax? Is this a young boy? Or is this one of the many demons that was said to haunt the house? Sound off down below. Number 8, the SS Watertown. This picture here perhaps is one of the creepiest on this list. I'm not sure what to think of this one. It comes from 1924 and it shows what appears to be two older men, or two older figures almost. I don't know, it's water, it's hard to tell. Some believe it's James Courtney and Michael Meehan in the water. Now the two had previously died and were buried at sea, hence that's why their first thought was them as to who it was. Other crew members saw these strange faces in the water as well, so when they turned back to get another look, 5 out of the 6 photos showed nothing. This was the only photo that showed what they saw. Are these the two lost crewmen, or is the vessel haunted by sinister forces? Number 7, backseat driver. This photo is from 1959. Okay, it was taken by a lady named Mabel Chinnery. And the photo at first glance is just a classic 60s shot of a man in a car. That man was Mabel's husband. Now the man in the back seat, however, that back left seat, we have no idea who that was. Her husband apparently was the only guy in the car at the time. And also, that's a pretty tough angle. If you wanted to recreate this photo with your friends after work, like try this. This is a really hard shot, even with phones now. It would be hard back in the day. It's like he's appearing to us through the seat almost with that angle. So either this is a lie, which happens often, people can lie, and a man was sitting in the back left seat, or like Mabel thinks, maybe this is her dead mother-in-law. Now, if she had said father-in-law, I think maybe it was his spirit, but this for sure looks like an older gentleman with a collar or something. Kind of looks like, dare I say it, the devil. I don't know, I read a lot of comic books. Number 6. Coventry Society demon. You may be thinking, some of these may not be demons, Taylor, maybe they're just nice spirits who stuck around after they passed. Yeah, while it's nice to believe that, photos like this convince me otherwise. This is from the Coventry Freeman Society and it shows everybody at this event dressed to the nines. But when you look at the top left corner over here, you see a hooded figure. Somebody that clearly doesn't belong with the vibe in this room at this event. Nobody else was seen also at any point at that night wearing a hood like this, so of course many believe it was a dark part of the afterlife photobombing this event. Honestly, I totally believe that. This is a weird one. The hood, maybe I've been watching Harry Potter lately, I don't know. Maybe it's a Dementor, we actually don't know. Number 5. The ghost pilot. Oh, this one gives me the creeps. I'm hoping it's just a friendly ghost. I included it because it's kind of nice, but you never really know, honestly. This one, I did some research, it's creepy. Any sort of spirit, I don't welcome. Yeah, I don't gamble on the afterlife. I'm actually all set. The ghost pilot is a photograph that shows a spirit from 1987. A woman named Mrs. Sayer was visiting an airfield in England, so of course, she did the classic tourist thing and got a photo in the cockpit. We all do it at some point, but do you ever think of who may have died in that exact spot before? After the age of 10 years old, I was like, you know what, I understand ghosts, I'm not gonna sit in that tank. I'm good, thanks. People swear the Titanic was a cursed ship and that spirits were responsible for the ship's bad luck. Now, next time you want to sit in the pilot's seat, look around for spirits, because this image was developed and it appears that somebody or something was in the helicopter with Miss Sayer the whole time. Number 4, the Paris demon. Originally, the tunnels under Paris were built for stone mines, but near the end of the 18th century, it turned into something haunting. Cemeteries were starting to fill up, and I mean that in a literal sense, and humans didn't figure out how to be clean, so bodies would just be laying on the sides of the roads. They started to pile up over time, so the solution was to use these catacombs. They were no longer needed for those mines anymore, so might as well use them as a mass graveyard. And now we have the scariest basement in the world. We have walls of skulls that on one hand, it's cool as hell, it's natural history, it's gothic, yet beautiful, but when Google Maps tried to give a user an up-close look, it seemed to have caught a shadowy demon figure. With more than 6 million souls laying down there, it doesn't shock me to hear about something like this at all. There's a video of the street view and in it you can see this figure. Check it out yourself. Number 3, Demons Are Us. For this next one, we'll be going down the Lego aisle. Yeah, how fun. A haunted Toys R Us. Can you imagine all those toys starting up at night by themselves? Bay Area's haunted Toys R Us is no longer a thing. Thankfully, as of 2018, that location closed down, but its tales, they live on forever. The Sunnyvale Toys R Us demonic presence appeared in the background of this photo. But of course, like others on this list, the people present at the time of the photo swear that nobody else was there. It's like everyone has bad memory, or everyone has good memory, I can't really tell right now. It's like, could this be a spirit or a demon caught on tape that just happens to be at a Toys R Us? I vote yes. Employees talked about creepy things happening there at night all the time, and the Sunnyvale store is indeed haunted by more than one ghost. That's what people say. The store stood where the Murphy farm once stood, so many think the spirit is the ghost of Johnny Johnson. I don't know, the fact that Ouija boards are a toy that is commonly used to, I don't know, communicate with spirits, maybe closing these doors was the best call. I don't think we welcomed in any good spirits. I don't think any spirits are clocking in for work, you know what I mean? And now it's closed, so I'm like, it didn't work. Whatever we tried, didn't work. Number 2, ghost boots. These boots are made for haunting, and that's just what they'll do. Yeah, I put a pair of boots on this list. That's where we're at now. This photo of a young girl may look like a classic family trip, but upon closer inspection, it seems like somebody or something is standing behind her. Now, of course, her father said that nobody was behind her at the time that it was taken, and I agree that, and like honestly, and I believe him. Honestly, that would be pretty weird if he was like, hey, can you stand right here? Yeah, you behind my daughter, don't move, but you stand right here in this open field, thanks. Ka-ching. I don't believe it, I don't buy it, it's weird. This shot was taken at Zushi Zenagawa, Japan, and you can see boots and what looks like clothing sticking out from behind the child's elbow. The kid's father said, I took a few photos, and when I was looking through them at night, I noticed the boots behind her. I took several photos in the same spot, but only one of them had boots. You always see that in movies, right? At night they're going through and they see like it's 2 a.m. It's never at a Walmart while it's being developed. They don't find these photos in a bright, busy area. It's always in like a dark kitchen. Ugh, it's creepy. So he freaked out and then put it on Reddit, and then now we're here. Full circle. And finally coming in at number 1, cave drawings. I know these aren't photos, but come on, there's nothing more eerie than humanity's origin, right? Let's do it, let's go back, let's turn the clocks back. And for archaeologists from around the world, this cave system in France doubles as the world's oldest art gallery. These Paleolithic paintings are haunting to look at. They were created from humans about 20,000 years ago, and it's now considered a heritage site. There's many of these caves around the world. So if you're thinking about sneaking down there in the Lascaux caves and taking a look yourself, well, you better think again. The cave was opened originally in 1948, 1958, but due to carbon dioxide levels from visitors, it was closed in 1963. Learning about our history is challenging, and when it's slowly fading away, that surely doesn't help. Just gotta hold your breath while you read. This is crazy. I'm currently reading a book called Supernatural by Graham Hancock, and in it he tries to dig through history to find the origins of spirituality, and markings in caves like these ones from ages ago definitely help. They resemble these demon-looking creatures almost, and this is long before religion. These drawings were supposedly from hallucinations, but many believe it's one of the first accounts of a demon interacting with a human. It's just drawn on a cave wall. Pec Merle is a cave in France that also has these strange drawings, and some say they resemble aliens, others of course voting demons. What do you guys think? This is from 25,000 years ago. Write all your thoughts and concerns down in the comments below. Kick off the list at number 10, Midnight Snack. This one was pretty recent. It was from December 2020. It was uploaded to the wonderful world of Reddit by a user named Oopsie Poopy Man, which is a great name. I would have taken that as well. The photo, at first, I didn't see anything. I had to turn my brightness up, so I suggest that you do the same. But in the meantime, I'll read to you the caption for this photo. They say, after hearing taps and noises from my kitchen, I take a photo and I see this. That's pretty scary. Maybe it's the Jabberwockies and they're gonna do a flash mob in your kitchen. That's what it appears to be. Or maybe, as the several other thousand people have commented, you should leave the house right away. That's terrifying. Also, the taps and stuff, being in Canada, I would assume that's raccoons, but that's much more scary than raccoons. Actually, it's pretty close. 5 raccoons versus 1 demon. I'm like, it's a lot of hands, a lot of grabbing. Is this a real ghost photo or is this a hoax? I zoomed in on the photo once and honestly, that was enough for me. You can go check it out yourself if you want. I'm done with this one. Number 9, photobomb. We have to include the work of William Hope in a list of spirit photography. He was the paranormal pioneer. In 1920, he took a photo of a couple, and in the background, this one's also a little tricky to see, but if you zoom in, you can see a really tall woman floating in between the two. Yeah, this one's really out there, so I'm not really sure I'm buying it, but also there's something to it that gives me the creeps still. It's like she's missing her head almost. Like the silhouette doesn't have a head, but you can clearly see her face in the middle of the body, like near the chest. It's intriguing either way, but one way or another, it's not easy to tamper with photos. Today, you can easily fake this photo of a demon or monster or whatever, but back in the 1920s, I don't know, could you do this? Get out of town. Cameras back then were like fire hazards. I'm not buying it. That's for sure a demon. Number 8, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. This one is a classic. If you haven't seen this photo, it's gonna live rent-free in your head, that's for sure, from here on out. This tale kicked off back in 1936 after a photo went around Country Life magazine. The photo shows the spirit wearing a brown gown, hence where her name comes from. Not the most creative of nicknames. They're just like, that's what it looks like. That's what we'll call it. Okay, demonology. Just the thing you want to see when you come home. Just a ghost floating on your staircase after a long night. We love it. Legend has it the ghost is that of Dorothy Townshend. She was the sister of Robert Walpole, who was the first Prime Minister of Britain back in 1676. A little bit of history there. Some reports say that the image is a result of long exposure gone wrong, but either way, I don't like looking at this photo. Let's move on again. Number 6, floating hand. This one is so scary. Okay, another photo from over 100 years ago. This time, the photographer may or may not have caught a floating demon hand. Yeah, that's where we're at now. Part 2, we love it. I'll show you the photo. You let me know if you see anything at first. Here we go. Okay, take a good look. Anything just sticking out, poking out, anything weird? This photo is a group of women who worked in a linen factory, and the lady on the far right has an extra hand. This one's resting on her shoulder. This may be a hidden person. Maybe somebody with long arms was out of frame. I'm a lanky dude, I get it. I can put my arms around like 9 of my closest friends. Look at this, I'm out of frame for both these hands, that's nuts. But it's the positioning of the hand that gives me the chills. It looks curled almost, which gives me like a demonic, insidious, The Last Key vibes. I don't like it. Let's move. I'm all set. Number 2, window spirit. Personal trainer Tony Ferguson was filming a castle in England, as most personal trainers do, but when the 33-year-old looked back on that footage, he thought that he'd missed out on a prank. He couldn't believe what he was looking at. Check it out. This was at Hurst Castle in Hampshire. He also recalls that nobody could have been moving around in that space. It was very petite. This wasn't the first time the spirit also had made its presence known though. The time before, Tony Ferguson said that it was this white mist, but this time it actually had energy to form. Yeah, whenever something has energy to form, that's how you know you're messing with some real I was asking it to show itself and this white mist flew straight at my camera. This time around, he got footage of the actual thing moving around. So whatever it's happening, it's getting more friendly or it's getting more comfortable. Either way, I'm never going to this castle and neither should you. What are your thoughts? Is this convincing or is this fake? And last but not least, number 1, the house guest. Okay, I saved the best for last, and by that I mean this is the scariest video I've ever seen. Let's do it. This comes from a middle-aged man in Oxford, North Carolina. It was his only day off work. He was looking forward to just kicking back and relaxing, but instead, the lights started to flicker in his house, and immediately after, the smoke detector started going off. The fridge, the bathroom, all these lights were going off, you name it. The water even started to run by itself. He filmed the footage, you know, while he was fleeing his home on his only day off, and while he was looking back on the footage later on, he saw this. Pretty terrifying, right? I know, I had to look at it, and now it's gonna be stuck in your head.
We're starting things off with the Guildhall ghost. This photograph was taken in 1985, which is kind of surprising. It looks like something taken in 1925. What we're looking at here are members of the Coventry Freeman organization at St Mary's Guildhall in Coventry, UK. They're bowing their heads in prayer. They're at a dinner service. In the top left-hand corner, though, we see a figure that seems to be wearing a long robe of some kind. They're not dressed like anyone else there. We're all mostly in suits and ties. Now, what makes this photo so creepy is that apparently nobody had seen this robed figure before until the film was developed and they looked at the image. Lord Mayor Walter Brandish, who was at the dinner, claimed there was no one in that spot at the time and nobody who had been dressed like that at the entire event. You can also see that whoever or whatever this figure is, it's pretty tall, a head or two taller than most of the people in the photo. Only thing scarier than a ghost is a really tall ghost. Number 9, the devil portrait. This is a photo taken of an infamous image of the devil depicted in one of the most supposedly cursed books in history, the Codex Gigas, aka the Devil's Bible. Yeah, the Devil's Bible. Wonder why the church wouldn't want this book getting around. It's believed to have been written between 1204 and 1230, year-wise, not time of day, and changed hands several times before being housed in Sweden's National Library in 1768, where it still sits today. The book contains the Old and New Testament, as well as a plethora of other information of the time, but it's the magic spells that place the book in that cursed category, as well as the image of the devil, of course. And legend has it that this is not just any mere depiction of Satan. There's a dark tale behind it. It's said that the Codex Gigas was written by a monk who had broken his vows in some way and was being sentenced to death. There are many versions of the tale, but the point is he attempted to cut a deal. If he could write a book containing all the world's knowledge in a single night, his life would be spared. This is of course an incredibly unfair and impossible task, unless you have some sort of deity helping you, right? And said monk was tempted by the devil himself and ended up selling his soul to him in order to help complete the book. And this demonic portrait is actually said to be Satan's own doing, his very signature, which he signed at the end. It's also, in some versions, the monk drew it as a tribute to him as well. Number 8, the White Lady of Worstead Church. Taken in August of 1975 by Peter Berthelot, who is visiting the Church of St Mary's, North Norfolk, with his family. It shows his wife Diane sitting on a church bench, head bowed as she prays. Now, Peter claimed that there was nobody sitting behind his wife when he snapped the picture, but once they were showing their pictures in a slideshow several months later with some friends, one of them chimed in asking, "Diane, who's that sitting behind you?" They looked closer at the photo and were like, "Yeah, who is that?" Diane was quoted saying, "When we saw the white figure sitting behind me on the projector screen, we just stood there with our mouths open." Looking closely at the ghostly figure, it almost looks like a woman wearing a bonnet. Peter and Diane took the photo back to the church, where the vicar told them the story of the White Lady, the ghost of a woman who appears to those who need healing. And apparently at the time the picture was taken, Diane was having some health issues and was on antibiotics. Next up, we have the Sefton Church ghost. In Merseyside, England, just north of Liverpool, stands the Sefton Church, which finished construction in the 16th century. This image here was taken in 1999, and you can clearly see what looks to be a priest standing there. It's a cool photo, but looking at it without context, you wouldn't really think there's anything supernatural about it, if it weren't for the fact that the photographer, Brad Steiger, said that there was only one other person with him in the church at the time, another photographer who was standing right beside him. So who is the person or specter in this picture? Could it be the spirit of a former priest that still lingers within the walls of the church, or is it the same ghost that apparently haunts a pub next door called the Punch Bowl? Maybe it's both. I looked it up on Google Maps. The Punch Bowl is still there, literally right next door. It's an old-timey looking pub. It could be haunted for sure. At number 6, we have the hospital demon. This next image is incredibly mysterious, as there's not a lot of information on it. All we really know, or at least have been told, is that the image was supposedly snapped by a nurse at an unknown hospital in an unknown state. It was taken on a security camera and shows a patient lying in bed, and crouching on top of them is what looks to be some sort of demonic entity. It looks very much like your archetypal devil. You can see what looks like horns on its head. Its legs almost look goat-like with hooves. It's very creepy, even if it is a total hoax. Again, there's not much information on this image, but apparently the entity appeared briefly, and just a few hours after it showed up, the patient died. Is this the image of a genuine demonic entity waiting for the patient to pass before dragging them to hell? Is it just a hoax? Let us know your thoughts in the comments once again. And we're going back to the realm of cursed books now with the Grand Grimoire. This image here is one of the many illustrations associated with the Grand Grimoire. It's a textbook of sorts containing all sorts of black magic spells, believed to have been written in 1702. The book gives a detailed description on how to summon a specific demon and the tools used in order to make it do your bidding. It also contains various spells used for winning the lottery, communicating with the dead, making yourself invisible, etc. I don't know. I gotta get my hands on this book. The book was readily available and became quite popular in France in the 19th century, and the church set out to vilify it, claiming this book and others like it to be sinister and dangerous, and their campaign was pretty successful. The book kind of died in popularity because, you know, people don't want demons in their houses, I guess. Don't know why. At the number 4 spot, we have the ghost of St Botolph. Now, to the untrained eye, this image looks pretty innocuous, right? It just looks like a church. But take a close look at the top right-hand corner. We'll zoom in for you. Yeah, it seems to be a ghostly figure standing by the balcony. The photo was taken in 1982 by a man named Chris Brackley. Apparently, he hadn't seen anyone standing by the balcony when the photo was snapped. It wasn't until he developed the picture that this strange entity showed up. The picture was analyzed extensively, and it was determined that it wasn't the result of double exposure. Chris's equipment seemed to be operating fine too. A few years after the picture was taken, Chris was contacted by a builder who had done restoration work on a crypt at the church, and apparently the builder had knocked down a wall and accidentally disturbed a coffin. Inside of it was a woman whose face was eerily similar to the one captured in Chris's picture. This next image was posted to Reddit by Reddit user u/luciddream a few years back with the caption, "Real ghost or demon on the reflection of one of my friend's photos." Now, this is an image that would be really easy to fake, of course, but all the same, I hate this. This is a freaky picture, and it makes me uncomfortable. It's hard to make out exactly what we're looking at here, but it's a picture taken of a mirror, and you can see the reflection of a woman lying on the bed, and behind her is, yeah, I don't know what. I hope it's a dog, but it looks more like some sort of ghostly or demonic entity with a mane of messy black hair, very Grudge-esque. It's just your perfect example of a cursed image. There's just something off about it. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one, as there's not a lot of info on it, but it's eerie. It's eerie. And at number 2, we have the cave demon. There aren't a whole lot of supposedly real photos of demons out there, but this one has been floating around the internet since the late 90s. According to the legend, 2 boys from England had been exploring a cave in the United Arab Emirates. At one point, they heard a man scream. It was too dark for the boys to make out anything, so they pulled out their camera and snapped a picture with the flash on. For a moment, the cave lit up, and they saw this goblin-like creature clinging to a rock. The boys immediately turned around and ran out of the cave as fast as they could. And finally, at our number 1 spot, we have the Spectre of Newby Church. This is a pretty famous image, said to be one of the most convincing ghostly photographs ever taken. This photo was snapped in 1963 by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord, great name, in the Church of Christ the Consoler, located on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, UK. The Reverend had been snapping pics of the church, and when the photos were developed, he noticed this mysterious, semi-translucent, cloaked figure standing at the church altar. He'd been completely alone in the church at the time. At least that's what he thought. First glance, it looks a bit like a plague doctor to me, almost. Skeptics took one look at this picture, though, and immediately called it a hoax, saying that the image was most likely the result of double exposure. It just looked too clear. The church was also not said to be haunted either. But the Reverend was adamant that what he took was real and sent the picture to experts to be examined, and it was determined at the time that the photo hadn't been tampered with at all. According to them, what was captured here was genuine. Whether it's an actual ghost or not, however, is still up in the air. This is also one that's really tall too. It's determined that whatever that thing was about 9 feet tall, so that is a very tall ghost. No thank you. Buckland Abbey is a 700-year-old house. It was built on the site of a former abbey, which was sold to Sir Francis Drake after he returned from his circumnavigation of the globe in 1580. But while Francis was a national hero, locals believed that he had only defeated the Spanish Armada because he'd made a pact with the devil. Sir Francis Drake's ghost is believed to ride across Dartmoor in a black coach driven by headless horses led by 12 chattering goblins and pursued by a pack of baying dogs. That is the most metal thing I've ever heard. But it's also kind of terrifying. It's also said that any living dog that hears the spectral hound is said to die instantly. So that's kind of sad. I'd veer away from this place if you have a dog. Egg Hill Church is one of the most haunted churches out there. Legend has it that the crazy pastor of the Egg Hill Church ended the lives of all of his parishioners post-communion, and soon after hanged himself and died as well. Because of this, visitors have reported hearing the cries of victims that died at the hands of the pastor, even though the building remains locked and empty. That wasn't enough. Word has it that the abandoned church and its premises are vandalized and haunted by ghosts. But the interesting thing is, Egg Hill Church did reportedly bear witness to a strange miracle. According to a story, a tornado struck the area during a camp meeting near the church, damaging trees and snapping branches all around. But the tents and the trees at the camp remained intact as people kneeled and prayed during the storm. So could these spirits who are locked inside the church have helped these folks? Who knows? Located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral is the oldest cathedral in the United States, still in use. The first version was constructed in 1718, and the final version of the cathedral was completed in the 1850s. Because of this long history, St. Louis Cathedral has become home to a number of spirits. One of the most famous ghosts to haunt the cathedral is Pierre Antoine, who served there as a priest from 1774 until his death in 1829. Pierre Antoine famously baptized Mary Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, and later performed the marriage to her first husband. Antoine's spirit has been seen walking through an alleyway outside the church, named after him, while quietly singing and looking in through the stained glass windows. Other ghosts include Pierre Antoine's predecessor, Pierre Dagobert, the pirate John Lafitte, and even the infamous Delphine Lalaurie. So if you ever go to this church, be prepared to see like a ghost or two. St. Mary's Episcopal Church, Kansas City. Father Henry David Jardine, a controversial Episcopal priest, is believed to haunt his former congregation at St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Henry came to the church in 1879, when it was still St. Luke's mission. He caused controversy by introducing Catholic practices, and there was speculation about him having a troubled past. In 1886, Henry died in St. Louis from an apparent chloroform overdose, which the Episcopal Church ultimately deemed was because of him taking his own life. Because of this, he could not be buried at St. Mary's as he'd intended, and the years since his death, visitors have smelled incense where there is none, and seen a ghostly figure thought to be him looking out one of the second-floor windows. During one paranormal investigation, an electromagnetic field detector went off near the altar, and the apparition of a priest was caught on film. In the year 2000, Jardine's body was moved to St. Mary's, and his final resting place now sits below the church's altar, and you'd think he'd stop showing himself around the church, but he hasn't. Constructed between 1882 and 1885, Most Holy Trinity Church in Brooklyn, along with its adjoining school and rectory, is believed to be extremely haunted. In 1897, church sexton George Stells was a victim of homicide in the church, but the criminal was never caught. Since then, a bloody handprint has occasionally appeared on the wall leading up to the bell tower, which is kinda cool. The school was built in 1887 on the site of the church's graveyard, although all the bodies were said to have been moved to a different location. Ghostly activity makes some suspect that a few bodies remain beneath the school. Yeah, building on top of a graveyard, I don't think that's ever worked out well for people. Always hear creepy stuff happening after that. People have seen lights in the gymnasium turn on and off by themselves for years and heard footsteps when the gym is completely empty. The rectory is also the site of paranormal activity. The bedroom formerly used by Monsignor Michael May, who died in 1895, is rarely used because of his ghost making noises in the room throughout the night. Dogs visiting the rectory have also been known to stare at the main staircase, even though it doesn't appear that anyone is there. But at least they don't drop dead instantly like before. The construction of St Bartholomew, the great church, began in 1120, located in what is now West Smithfield. A monk and Norman courtier named Raher was responsible for receiving land and funds from King Henry I to build the church. There's a lot of history contained in St. Bart's, including some stories that are particularly dark. A number of homicides and executions took place on the grounds of the church, including the burning of heretics. And today, several resident ghosts and unnamed entities reside within the church walls. The Duke of Argyll, the painter William Hogarth, and the apparition of a priest have been seen in the church. There's also a white mist that appears in the center aisle of St. Bart's, and some reports indicate the mist forms into the shape of a woman. The positive energy is countered by a black mist that is also seen in the church and is thought to be residual negative energy of all the violence seen at St. Bart's. The church's most famous ghost, though, is Raher himself. The monk has been seen wandering the church, supposedly looking for his foot, which was allegedly stolen from his crypt centuries after his death. Why would someone take a foot? Give that back. That is not nice. Don't steal dead people's feet. It's also said that his ghost appears on the first day of every July at 7 a.m., so that's something. In 1918, a young woman was seen pacing the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, located at the corner of 3rd and Ormsby in Louisville, Kentucky. More than a century later, it said her ghost is still seen, pacing and sobbing during the night. This ghost is known as the Lady of the Stairs, or Miss G, which I love. It's believed that Miss G was a member of the prominent Gothrite family, and that her parents attempted to marry her to a much older man after she graduated from high school. But Miss G had already fallen in love with a young man who is currently fighting in World War I. After the war, the soldier, who is believed to be Herbert Fulton Dixon, returned to Louisville, and the young couple planned to leave town and get married in Chicago. That night, the night they were to leave, Miss G went to the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, where she and Dixon regularly met. Sadly, Dixon never showed up, and passerby saw a distressed Miss G pacing the steps of the church. As it turned out, Dixon had come down with the Spanish flu and was unable to make it to the church, but the news never made it to Miss G. In a matter of days, both Dixon and Miss G had died from the flu. Miss G's spirit has been seen on the church steps ever since. Sad. It was a sad world before cell phones, right? I got the flu, can't show up, please go home, get out of the cold. As the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe, the stunning York Minster is believed to date back to 627 AD. With a church that old, there are a number of hauntings associated with the church. One of the most famous is that during the 1820s, two ladies from a tour group going around the church found themselves separated and wandering around the building. They encountered a man in a naval uniform who approached one of the women and whispered in her ear. The story goes that he was the woman's brother, who had died at sea. The siblings had made a pact that whoever died first was to come back and tell the other if the afterlife existed. Another apparition said to haunt the York Minster is Dean Gale, who died in 1702, aged 26. He reportedly enjoys sitting in the pews and listening to the sermons. They sound like friendly ghosts, which is, alright. The Snagov Monastery in Romania. This island-bound church, the Snagov Monastery, seems perfect, but has a dark side. The church is the final resting place for one of the most notorious and bloodthirsty rulers of all time, Founded back in the 14th century, more than just one church has stood upon this island. The original wooden structure was doomed, eventually sinking into the surrounding lake, causing locals to believe the island was cursed. Eventually, this island was to become the resting place for, ladies and gentlemen, Vlad Tepes, better known as Vlad the Impaler, the real-life inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Vlad is said to be buried at the entrance to the church. There is a belief that Vlad had committed more atrocities in his life than any individual ever should, so he was placed at the church's entry so that anyone walking over his grave would have to take some of his sins upon themselves, which doesn't seem fair. There remains some mystery and debate whether Vlad is actually even buried at the church, but the monastery is still said to have ties to Vlad regardless, who had fortifications surrounding the island and a jail and torture chamber on the island itself. In a remote part of South Australia lies an artificial ghost town known as Old Tailem Town. This attraction consists of many buildings, most of which are over 100 years old, that had been abandoned and then relocated to this town. There's a massive mix of history and dark events tied to many of these buildings, and some of them are considered to be, of course, haunted. One of the buildings that has gained a reputation for being possibly the most haunted building in Old Tailem Town is its church. The Wolseley Methodist Church is feared as countless visitors to the building have claimed to have weird experiences. These include strange sensations, sighting shadow people, and even interacting with a young boy who was thought to have drowned on the property many years ago. And we're starting things off at number 10 with the Red Ghost. Now, this is actually a piece of footage, not a photo, but like I always say, footage is typically more entertaining anyway. This clip was sent to the YouTube channel Vault of Fear, who shared it online. The name of the church isn't given, nor is the location, but we see the camera person filming the church. Now, they either have terrible cinematography skills, or they're just kind of nervous because they saw something before they started filming. I'm not sure which. They eventually rest on the church altar though, where we clearly see a semi-translucent red figure walk from left to right. It then seems to crouch down before completely vanishing. This could definitely be a hoax, but if it isn't, and this is just what the person captured in camera, it's pretty incredible. Definitely not a trick of the light or anything. That looks like a figure walking across the floor. What do you all think though? Hoax? Genuine? Share your thoughts down below, and leave your comments down below even if you don't have any thoughts on this, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Nothing to lose. Number 9. Spooky figures. Back in 2017, 35-year-old Leah Harrison, visiting Lincoln Cathedral, captured something strange in a picture she snapped. She described the figure as looking like the ghostly figures of a woman and a boy, possibly the ghosts of a mother and son. It's kind of hard to make out these figures. They could definitely just be smudges or pixelation from the camera, but what adds to the credibility possible ghosts caught on camera here is that this church is said to be haunted. With it being constructed all the way back in 1072, the place certainly has a lot of history, so if these mysterious figures are indeed ghosts, then who could they be? Well, there's an interesting tale surrounding this church, and it all started in 1349 during the bubonic plague. As the Black Death swept over the town of Lincoln, the bodies began piling up, and the church, being overrun with corpses, eventually piled a bunch of them in a mass grave next to the cathedral. The spirits of those buried without proper ceremony or blessing are said to haunt the grounds, rising on the anniversary of their burial, forever trapped between heaven and hell. Sticking with Lincoln Cathedral for a moment, let's talk about the haunted well, pictured here. This well is associated with an urban legend surrounding the devil. Now, the well definitely has an old allure about it, being constructed nearly 1,000 years ago, but there's nothing immediately unsettling about it at first glance. But legend has it, if you walk around the well 7 times and stick your finger into one of the holes in the door, the devil himself will cast judgment on you. If you're deemed a good person, you'll simply feel his breath on your finger, but if he deems you a real miserable piece of crap, he'll chomp your finger clean off. What constitutes bad or good to Satan? That's hard to say. I think it's safe to assume though that sticking your finger into strange holes is probably not the best idea without knowing exactly what's going on in there. Next we have St Mary's Church in Akenham. St Mary's Church is rumored to be haunted by the devil. According to local legends, the devil is believed to rest beneath the church, specifically beneath a broken tombstone known as the Devil's Grave. The church, situated in the small village of Akenham, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, has gained a reputation for supernatural occurrences over the years. The tale goes that the devil himself is said to have chosen this location as his resting place. The focal point of this belief is a particular tombstone within the churchyard, colloquially referred to as the Devil's Grave. And legend goes that disturbing the Devil's Grave could cause the Lord of Darkness himself to rise, inviting malevolent forces into the world. At number 6, we have another St. Mary's Church, this one in Clophill. If I were to conjure up an image in my mind of a haunted church, probably look exactly like this. This 14th century chapel fell into disuse in 1848, and over the years, it's gained a reputation for being a haunted site with possible satanic activity. During the 60s, evidence of disturbing activities surfaced when the church and its grounds were investigated. The walls of the chapel were found covered in graffiti, with occult symbols and ritualistic markings on it. Graves in the churchyard had been disturbed, pointing to possible disturbing activities taking place on the grounds. There are also urban legends associated with this place too. One legend goes that the church is haunted by the devil, mostly because of the orientation of the church altar. And traditionally, Christian churches are constructed to face the eastern direction, symbolizing the direction of the heavens and the anticipated coming of the Messiah. But in the case of St. Mary's Church, the altar faces the southern direction. Number 5, St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley. If that's not an English-sounding name, I don't know what is. Pluckley. Look at this spooky image here. I don't think it gets any more classically gothic horror than that either. St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley, as well as the town itself, is said to be very, very haunted. The church, dating back several centuries, has become known for its paranormal activity. Legend goes that the churchyard is haunted by various spirits. Visitors claim to have witnessed apparitions and strange occurrences in and around the church. Haunted occurrences range from ghostly figures to unexplained sounds. One of the most well-known spirits said to haunt the grounds is known as the Red Lady, who roams the church grounds at night in search of her stillborn child. Pluckley as a town has also earned quite the reputation, said to be the most haunted village in Britain. The village's population to ghost ratio is very out of whack. It's a small place, but it has 12 known ghosts roaming around it. And at number 4, we have Raus Church. This is a 12th century sandstone church in the Czech Republic. It's adorned with a peculiar feature above its main entrance, a small stone face believed to depict the devil. The legend surrounding this traces back to the church's construction and involves a local troll. According to the lore, during the church's initial construction, a troublesome troll, one of those in the comments that keeps asking about people's hair. I wonder if this is him. Anyway, this troll, angered by the sound of church bells, consistently disrupted the building process by moving materials across a stream every night. Frustrated builders eventually abandoned the site altogether, choosing to build the church in its current location nearby. Still discontented, the troll decided to relocate 26 miles northwest to Kullaberg. There, the troll expressed a desire to return home, but claimed he was hindered by what he called the jingling gray mare, a reference to the church and its chiming bells, which he was too afraid to name directly. The church's distinctive stone head above the entrance is linked to this legend. There are 3 main theories about its origin. One goes that it represents Ra, the giant, credited with the church's construction, another associating with Roland, a medieval Christian knight, and the most prominent belief is that it portrays the devil. The idea here is that the devil's face is seen as a protective measure against trolls and malevolent beings. And at number 3, the Spectre of Newby Church. This image here is very famous, taken in 1963 by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord in the Church of Christ the Consoler, found on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire. Reverend Lord had been photographing the church. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but once he developed the pictures, he discovered a mysterious semi-translucent cloaked figure standing at the church altar. Reverend Lord claimed to be alone in the church at the time of taking the photo. The figure in the image looks a lot like a plague doctor or some malevolent type of spirit. It definitely doesn't look friendly, but skeptics quickly dismissed the photograph as a hoax. saying it was probably just double exposure or something. So Reverend Lord sent the photograph to experts to be examined, and according to their findings at the time, the photo showed no signs of tampering. Apparently, at least according to them, the image was genuine. And at number 2, we have Chernobyl Church. Pretty much any photo taken in Chernobyl is going to be eerie, given the context that it's the site of one of the worst nuclear disasters in history, but the abandoned church has to be one of the creepiest abandoned sites. That and the abandoned school probably takes second place. The church is beautiful, but looking at these images, it's hard not to have this strange feeling about it. Human beings are just designed to be a little uncomfortable in big, empty places where there should be people. Falls into that liminal spaces realm of horror. Plus, the church is in the middle, again, of Chernobyl, so apart from the harmful air, you have mutated animals and God knows what else lurking around. Imagine having to spend a whole night alone in this place with nothing but a sleeping bag and a flashlight. Would you do that for like $500? I'd consider it. If anyone wants to offer me like an e-transfer for $500 to like stay in one of these haunted places, I might consider it. That could be fun to film. Finally, though, we have St. George's Church in Czech Republic. This is what this abandoned church looks like now. Built in the 14th century, this Gothic marvel faced abandonment in the 1960s because of structural concerns. People had already thought the place was haunted, but then the roof literally caved in on the place during mass one day, which certainly didn't make people feel any less uneasy about going into the place. Over the years, the church was broken into, vandalized, and robbed. Believing the place was culturally significant, artist Jacob Hadrava stepped in with a unique vision to breathe some life into the decaying church. Instead of the usual restoration, he populated the place, all the empty pews, with ghostly sculptures crafted from plaster. And these eerie figures now sit in this sacred place, frozen in a congregation that blurs the line between art and the supernatural. Stories of a haunting atmosphere within this church still persist today. Some claim to sense an otherworldly presence as they explore the dimly lit space with whispers of ghostly apparitions and unexplained sounds. And we are starting off this list with the ghost of Worstead Church. So back in August of 1975, there's this guy named Peter Bertholdt, just your average Joe, right? He's out with his family taking a stroll around the Church of St. Mary's in Norfolk. Nothing unusual, just a family day out. Peter's got his camera, it snaps a picture of his wife Diane sitting on a church bench, deep in prayer mode. Seems pretty ordinary. Peter, being the typical family man, claims there was absolutely nobody behind his wife when he took that picture. Fast forward a few months, they're hanging out with some friends, showing off their holiday slides, and boom, one of their friends points at a photo and asks, "Hey Diane, who's that sitting behind you?" Cue the collective confusion. Peter and Diane squint at the photo, and lo and behold, there's this white figure lurking behind Diane, almost like a woman in an old-fashioned bonnet. Now, they're not exactly the type to jump to ghostly conclusions, but when they saw that eerie figure on the projector screen, they were a little bit disturbed. They decide to investigate, take the photo back to the church. The local vicar, always up for a good ghost story, tells them about the legend of the White Lady. Apparently, she's this ghostly woman who pops up when people need healing. And at the time that photo was taken, Diane was dealing with some health problems and was on antibiotics. Coincidence? Maybe. Spooky? Definitely. At our number 9 spot, we have the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. So it's 1991. Judy Fells, a former member of the Ghost Research Society, decided to check out the infamous Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Illinois. Armed with a camera, she started snapping pictures, thinking she was alone in the graveyard. Little did she know, she wasn't. When the photos developed, Judy spotted something bizarre. There, on one of the gravestones, was a woman. Shown in this picture here. She appeared relaxed, slightly leaning forward as if gently rocking. Judy hadn't seen anyone while she was taking the pictures. Reports of this woman in white date back to the 70s. She's not your typical ghost either. Sometimes she's seen alone, just chilling on a tombstone. Other times she's holding something that many over the years have believed to be a baby. And it's not just in that one spot that her ghost is spotted. People claim to have seen her all around the graveyard. Next on the list is the photograph of the Wem ghost. So our story begins in the small town of Wem in England. In 1995, a terrible fire ravaged a building in town, destroying it completely. What caught everyone's attention, though, was a photo taken by local resident Tony O'Reilly during the fire. The picture captured a young girl standing amidst the flames, seemingly unharmed. The witnesses claimed there was no girl at the scene. No living girl, that is. Some said the ghostly figure looked a lot like a girl who died in a fire at the same spot in 1677. Her name was Jane Churn. According to legend, her ghost occasionally appeared in the town. Experts examined the photograph, attempting to debunk it, but there was no conclusive evidence. Tony O'Reilly, the man behind the lens, was said to be a straightforward and honest guy. He insisted that he hadn't noticed the ghostly figure when he took the photo and that he hadn't doctored it whatsoever. Number 7, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. Back in 1936, Captain Hubert C. Provand snapped a pic in Raynham Hall, Norfolk. It would go on to be one of the most well-known ghost photographs of all time. He happened to capture the ghostly figure of an entity known as the Brown Lady. According to the story, she's Lady Dorothy Walpole, a woman who got the short end of the stick back in the 18th century. She had an affair. Hubby found out, decided to lock her away in a dark corner of the mansion. She got hit with smallpox in 1726 and died a pretty miserable death. Visitors and staff at Raynham Hall have claimed to bump into this ghostly lady over the years. Some hear her footsteps like she's climbing the stairs. Others feel a sudden chill even when it's warm. And then there are those who swear they've seen her, the full-blown ghostly apparition, something like in this photograph here. Next, we have the famous Newby Church ghost photo. Back in 1963, a reverend named Kenneth F. Lord was snapping pictures inside the Church of Christ the Consoler, located at Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, UK. And as he snapped away, nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, but fast forward to when he develops the film, and there's this bizarre photo showing up. In the picture, clear as day, there's this semi-translucent, almost monk-like figure just hanging out at the church altar. Again, Reverend Lord claimed he was all by himself in the church when he took the shot. No one else was around, so who the heck was this phantom monk? Totally baffled, Reverend Lord decided to get some experts involved. They checked out the photo and swore up and down that it hadn't been messed with. As to who these experts were, that info's not really known. There's a good chance these supposed experts were of the self-proclaimed variety, but creepy picture regardless. In at our number 5 spot, we have the Sefton Church ghost photograph. Alright, so in Merseyside, England sits Sefton Church, just a hop and skip north of Liverpool. Now, back in 1999, a photographer named Brad Steiger was out there, camera in hand. There was another photographer right next to him, both of them doing their thing. While they were clicking away, Steiger managed to capture something strange. In one of his shots, clear as day once again, there's a figure that looks like a priest. Not weird to see a priest in a church, but again, there were apparently only 2 people in the church at the time, neither of which were dressed as priests. No fancy setups, no eerie lighting here, just a random day, 2 guys with cameras, and a photo of a phantom priest. There's also a pub next door to the church called the Punch Bowl, which is supposedly haunted. Maybe the ghostly father in this picture heads next door to have a couple sneaky drinks now and again. Probably what I'd do if I were a ghost. I imagine it would get pretty boring after a while. In fact, I think that's what creeps me out the most about the idea of ghosts. Not seeing one, but actually becoming one, like trapped in this eternal monotonous prison, spending your days repeating the last moments of your death, and then occasionally appearing ominously in people's amateur photographs. Like, yeah, something to look forward to. Number 4, St Botolph's Church Ghost. In 1982, a photographer, Chris Brackley, snapped a photo of St Botolph's Church, not suspecting anything unusual, but when the film was developed, a mysterious figure appeared by the balcony. This one is a bit harder to spot, but just kind of take a close look in the top right-hand corner there. Brackley swore he hadn't seen anyone there when he took the shot. The photo underwent rigorous analysis, ruling out double exposure or equipment glitches. Brackley's gear was working fine, yet the unexplained figure was there. A few years passed and Brackley was then contacted by a builder who had worked on a crypt restoration at the same church. And during the restoration, a wall was knocked down, revealing a disturbed coffin, and inside was a woman whose face that the builder said eerily resembled the figure captured in Brackley's photo. Next up, we have the Coventry Spectre. In 1985, there was this prayer meeting at St Mary's Guildhall in Coventry, England. Members of the Coventry Freeman organization gathered for a prayer meeting. They were your typical group, all suited up and bowing their heads in prayer. Now, the odd part happened later when the photos from the meeting were developed. Among the familiar faces was an unfamiliar one, a figure distinctively dressed in a long robe. This wasn't your average attendee attire, everyone else was in modern suits and ties, but there was this mysterious robed figure in the top left-hand corner. No one in the group remembered anyone dressing like that during the meeting, and what really struck people was the height of this figure. They were noticeably tall, not the kind of person you'd easily overlook in a room. Alright, in second place we have a demon in the hospital. The story goes that a nurse working her shift at some unnamed hospital snapped this pic. She'd taken a picture of the security camera, and in the shot you get this patient chilling in bed, and well, not really chilling, I'll get to that part later, but anyway, he's in bed, and right on top of them there's something straight out of your worst nightmares. A demon, at least that's what it looks like. It's your classic devil type of vibe, horns on its head, legs that resemble something almost goat-like. The entity apparently popped up briefly, and what's even creepier is that just a few hours after it appeared, the patient in the bed passed away. Is this a genuine demon caught on camera? Grim Reaper's demonic cousin playing a visit, patiently awaiting to drag its next victim into the fiery depths? I don't know. Why don't you let us know in the comments. Finally, we have the Pine Hill Cemetery ghost. In Pine Hill Cemetery, a series of photographs captured by Tyler Karanasios brought attention to the possibility of paranormal activity in this quiet burial ground. What initially seemed like routine snapshots changed when he took a closer look at the pictures. As Karanasios enhanced the images, an eerie figure, almost like a woman wearing a veil, appeared in the background. He hadn't noticed anything when he was actually taking the pictures. It only showed up later. Pine Hill Cemetery in Hollis, New Hampshire has been rumored to be a hotspot for paranormal experiences. If you're thinking the figure is just a headstone, by the way, there was another photo taken during the day which shows that there is no headstone in that spot.
Coming in at number 10 is Church of Christ the Consoler. The Spectre of Newby Church is the name given to a figure found in a photograph taken in the Church of Christ the Consoler on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, United Kingdom. The image was taken in 1963 by the Reverend Kenneth F. Lord. As the figure appears to resemble a human, much speculation has been had regarding what type of person might be in the image. Most speculation by believers has concluded that it resembles a 16th century monk with a white shroud over his face, possibly to mask leprosy or another disfigurement. Others believe it looks like a plague doctor from the 16th and 17th centuries. No initial claims suggested that the figure would measure up to be 9 feet tall, but its feet are not visible, so it could easily be standing on a box, giving the impression of height. Now, some people thought the photo was due to double exposure, but photographic experts have concluded that the image is not the result of double exposure. So what was it and why was it in the church? No one truly knows, but it's extremely frightening. Number 9. St Andrew's on the Red. St Andrew's on the Red Church, Manitoba holds the distinction of being the oldest stone church still operating in Western Canada. The church was built between 1845 and 1849, so I mean, no wonder it's haunted. One of the most well-known hauntings is a woman in white, who many claim died during the construction of the church and is now seen in the graveyard. People have also seen a man in black lurking in the graveyard, as well as a phantom car that suddenly appears and then disappears into the night. There's also a pair of red eyes that seem to float between the headstones. Yeah, that's a no for me. Now, these hauntings don't happen exclusively at nighttime, oh no. Even during the day, paranormal investigators have heard the sound of nails being driven into a coffin. Now, arguably the most unsettling story that comes out of St. Andrew's on the Red is that people often have nightmares after a paranormal encounter at the church. Those who who have seen the red eyes, the woman in white, or the man in black all reported having vivid nightmares for days or even weeks after the encounter. The sound of chains rattling against the locked cemetery gates is one of the common themes in these nightmares. Now, after hearing all these stories, I'm still shocked that people go there. Number 8. Most Holy Trinity Church. Constructed between 1882 and 1885, Most Holy Trinity Church in Brooklyn, along with its adjoining school and rectory, is believed to be extremely haunted. In 1897, church sexton George Seltz had his life ended in the church, but whoever was responsible was never caught. Since then, a bloody handprint has occasionally appeared on the wall leading up to the bell tower. Casual. Now, the school was built in 1887 on the site of the church's graveyard. Now, although all the bodies were said to have been moved to a different location, ghostly activity makes some suspect that a few bodies remain beneath the school. And I mean, why would you ever think to build a school over a graveyard anyway? People have seen the lights in the gymnasium turn on and off by themselves for years, and heard footsteps when the gym is empty. The rectory is also the site of paranormal activity, and the bedroom formerly used by Monsignor Michael May, who died in 1895, is rarely used due to his ghost making noises in the room throughout the night. Number 7. St Bartholomew's Church. The construction of St Bartholomew the Great Church began in 1112. It said a monk and a Norman courier named Rahir were responsible for receiving the land and funds from King Henry I to build the church. A number of deaths and executions took place on the ground of the church. Now today, several resident ghosts and unnamed entities reside within the church walls. The Duke of Argyll, the painter William Hogarth, and the apparition of a priest have been seen in the church. There's also a white mist that appears in the center aisle of St. Bart's, and some reports indicate the mist forms into the shape of a woman. Now, this positive energy is countered by a black mist that is also seen in the church and is thought to be residual negative energy of all the violence seen at St. Bart's. The church's most famous ghost is Rahir himself. The monk has been seen wandering the church, supposedly looking for his foot, which was allegedly stolen from his crypt centuries after his death. It's also said that his ghost appears on the first day of every July at 7 a.m. Number 6. St. Louis Cathedral. Located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral is the oldest cathedral in the United States still in use. The first version was constructed in 1718, and the final versions of the cathedral was completed in the 1850s. Now, due to its long history, St. Louis Cathedral has become home to a number of spirits. Now, one of the most famous ghosts to haunt the cathedral is Père Antoine, who served there as a priest from 1774 until his death in 1829. Père Antoine famously baptized Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, and later performed the marriage to her first husband. Antoine's spirit has been seen walking through an alleyway outside the church named after him while quietly sitting and looking through the stained glass windows. The first recorded sighting of Antoine's ghost was in 1924. Other ghosts include Pierre Antoine's predecessor, Pierre Dagbert, the pirate Jean Lafitte, and even the infamous Delphine Lalaurie. Number 5. St. Mary's Catholic Church. St. Mary's Catholic Church was built in 1845 and is the oldest extant church in Nashville. Now, there are 3 ghost rumors to haunt this church and its grounds. One story is about a priest who died during construction of the church. Another story claims that during a civil war, a Catholic priest serving as a chaplain for the Confederate Army was shot and died in the church. There is another rumor that the ghost is the spirit of Bishop Richard P.S. Mills, who died in 1860. He was buried in the church basement and supposedly still haunts his own stomping grounds. According to a story from 1937, a pounding at his bedroom door woke up a priest in the rectory, but he could find no one there. After he fell asleep, he was woken again, this time by a pounding on the headboard of his bed. There was no one in the room, so he blamed the old bishop. Number 4. St. Nicholas Church. Located in Kent, England, the village of Puckenley is considered one of the most haunted villages in England. Perhaps the most notably haunted site in St. Nicholas Church, which dates back to 1090 CE. Perhaps the most notably haunted site is St. Nicholas Church, which dates back to 1090 CE. A number of expansions and renovations have been made to the church over the years, and its long history lends itself to hauntings. Inside the church, an orb of light has been seen near the crypt of the Deering family, who oversaw the village for centuries. Knocking has also been heard coming from the crypt, and some have witnessed the spirit known as the White Lady, who is thought to be one of the members of the Deering family buried there. Now, outside the church, the apparition of the Red Lady has been seen in the churchyard along with a dog. During a paranormal investigation in the 1970s, it's believed those carrying out the investigation were visited by a ghost dog. Number 3. the first Church of Christ scientist. In 1918, a young woman was seen pacing the steps of the first Church of Christ scientist located in Louisville, Kentucky. More than a century later, it said her ghost is still seen pacing and sobbing during the night. Now this ghost is known as the Lady of the Stairs, or Miss G. It's believed that Miss G was a member of the prominent Gathright family and that her parents attempted to marry her to a much older man after she graduated from high school. However, Miss G had already fallen in love with a young man who was fighting in World War I. After the war, the soldier, who is believed to be Herbert Fulton Dixon, returned to Louisville, and the young couple planned to leave town and get married in Chicago. The night they were to leave, Miss G went on the steps of the First Church of the Christ Scientist, where she and Dixon regularly met. Sadly, Dixon never showed up, and a passerby saw a distressed Miss G pacing on the steps of the church. As it turned out, Dixon had come down with the Spanish flu and was unable to make it to the church, but the news never made it to Miss G. In a matter of days, both Dixon and Miss G had died from the flu, and Miss G's spirit has been seen on the church step ever since. Number 2. St. Mark's Episcopal Church. St. Mark's Episcopal Church is Wyoming's oldest church, having been built in 1868. Now, during the construction of St. Mark's, 2 Swedish immigrants were hired to complete the masonry for the church's bell tower. The foundation for the bell tower goes 15 feet into the ground and stands 60 feet tall with 4-foot thick walls. Now, as the 2 men worked, one fell to his death in the basement of the bell tower. The other man, fearing no one would believe that the fall was an accident, buried the man within the walls of the bell tower before fleeing the state. Yep, he thought that was the best solution. In the 1920s, the bell tower was finally completed, but construction workers said they heard a disembodied voice saying, "There is a body in the wall." Now, the church rector believed that the bell tower was haunted and even had a special room built in the tower for the man's ghost. People have continued to report hearing the voices of a Swedish Manson in the years since the bell tower's completion. And no wonder. If I was that man, I would haunt the church too. And coming in at number 1 is St. Mary's Guildhall. On January 22nd, 1985, the Coventry Freeman organization and their guests stood in prayer during a dinner event. All the guests were still, and as it was a dark room, the photographer probably thought it would be the perfect time to allow for a longer than usual exposure to get enough light into the picture, which makes sense. Now, nothing was out of the ordinary at the time, but as people started to see the print of the picture, a mystery surfaced. Who was the robed figure standing near the end of one of the tables? No one had dressed up for the event, and no one remembers anyone standing there as they stood for prayer. Now, the figure also seems to be taking part in the prayer, head slightly bowed, hands clasped in front. Coventry, Warwickshire is where the event was hosted, and it has many legends of ghosts and paranormal activity, but I wonder why this being decided to join in the prayer. Number 10. SS Watertown. In December 1924, James Courtney and Michael Meehan were crew members on the SS Watertown. They were cleaning a cargo tank of the oil tanker, and they were overcome by gas fumes, which resulted in both of their deaths. Due to this, the crew buried them at sea, but to their astonishment, the ghostly faces of the soldiers appeared in the water the next day. Yeah, like in the waves. Later on, many other crew members reported seeing the faces as well. The faces were so visible that the captain of the ship ordered them to take a picture of them to have for proof, you know, so people didn't think that they were crazy. And this was smart, because if someone told me they saw faces of 2 dead men in the water, I would probably never talk to them again and think that they were cuckoo. Although, in the picture, you can clearly see 2 faces, which is just plain creepy. When the SS Watertown returned to land, the negative was even checked for fakery and proclaimed genuine. So yeah, just 2 faces chilling in the waves. No big deal. Number 9. The Nurse. This photo was taken in an abandoned tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky called Waverly Hills Sanatorium in 2006. As you can imagine, many people passed away here, and it's rumored to be filled with paranormal activity. In recent years, it has become one of America's most popular destinations for ghost hunters. This image depicts a woman just standing to the right side, but when the photo was taken, no one was there. It was a ghost. It has been agreed among the paranormal community that the photo depicts Mary Lee, a nurse who took her own life in the hospital. The story goes, this poor woman was impregnated by a doctor who worked in the hospital, but later wanted nothing to do with her. Nowadays, she wanders the halls of the hospital and interacts with ghost hunters. Number 8. Tulip Staircase. Reverend Ralph Hardy, a retired clergyman from White Rock, British Columbia, took this famous photograph in 1966. Originally, he only wanted to take a picture of the elegant tulip staircase in the Queen's House section of the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, England. And I mean, I don't blame him. They're pretty. But upon development, the photo revealed a shrouded figure climbing the stairs. It's strange and unsettling, and Ralph said there was no one else in the frame when he took it. Experts who examined the original negative concluded that it had not been tampered with. The vicinity of the staircase is rumored to be haunted, and unexplained footsteps have often been heard there, so it's most likely something supernatural who just wanted their photo taken. Number 7. The Brown Lady. The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is a ghost that reportedly haunts Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England. It became one of the most famous hauntings in the United Kingdom when photographers from Country Life magazine claimed to have captured its image. According to the legend, the Brown Lady is the ghost of Dorothy Walpole, the sister of Robert Walpole, generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. She was the second wife of Charles Townshend, second Viscount Townshend, who was notorious for his violent temper. The story goes that when Charles discovered that his wife had committed adultery with Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in her rooms in the family home, Raynham Hall. According to Mary Wortley Montagu, Dorothy was in fact entrapped by the Countess of Wharton. She invited Dorothy over to stay for a few days, knowing that her husband would never allow her to leave, not even to see her children. She remained at the Raynham Hall until her death in 1726 from smallpox. This is just an extremely sad story, and I can't imagine her pain. The first sighting of the Brown Lady was in 1835, and the photograph was taken in 1936. Number 6. Falling through the ceiling. Back in the 1950s, the Cooper family from Texas moved into their new house. Once there, they took a family photo, which seems normal, right? Well, not for them. When the picture was developed, the image of a body falling from the ceiling was clearly visible. To be clear, no one fell from the ceiling when they took the photo, so what happened? As further investigation on the story has brought no plausible explanation, there exist many speculations, including one that argues that the shadow is the ghost of the previous owner of the house. But my question is, why is he falling from the ceiling, and why did he have to ruin that beautiful family photo? I remember seeing this photo on the internet when I was probably too young to see it, and after all these years, this image still gives me chills. Ugh. Number 5. Backseat Ghost. On March 22nd, 1959, Mabel Chinnery and her husband drove to the graveyard in which her mother had been buried. Her mother had died a week previously, and they were going to take photos of her grave, and they did. As Mabel returned to the car, she decided to use her last remaining shot to take a candid picture of her husband waiting in the vehicle on the passenger side. Nothing was out of the ordinary, it was just a random photo, but when the pictures were developed, one of Mabel's friends pointed out that someone, believed to be her mother, appeared to be behind her husband in the back seat of the car. Now, was the figure her mother or some other spirit? Who knows? I mean, they were in a graveyard, it could have been anyone or anything. The photograph itself wasn't seen in the United States until the story got a whole page in the Sunday newspaper. Mabel stated that the spot where the unexpected figure appeared in the back of the car is where her mother always sat when they went for drives, so it makes sense that it could be her. An unnamed photo expert is quoted as saying, "The lady in the back can't be the result of a double exposure. If it were, the door's upright wouldn't block off part of her face, and she can't be a reflection in the window either." So maybe it really is Mabel's mother. Number 4. Wem Ghost. On November 19th, 1995, Wem Town Hall burned to the ground in Wem, Shropshire, located in England. During the fire, Tony O'Rahilly, a sewage farm worker who was also an amateur photographer, was originally stopped by police from approaching the burning building. He took a picture of the blaze from across the street with a 200mm lens. It appeared to depict the image of a young girl in the doorway of the burning building. Now, to be clear, there were no injuries or fatalities from the fire. This was not a human. Locals who saw the photo believed it was the ghost of Jane Churm, a young girl who was accused in 1677 of starting a fire in the same town. The image of the girl in the doorway of the burning building was not noticed by Tony, the photographer, or the onlookers. It only appeared after the photo had been developed. I mean, if she was accused of starting a fire and then she popped back up in an area where another fire started, it seems like it really could be Jane. Number 3. The Spectre Spectre of Newby Church. The Spectre of Newby Church is the name given to a figure in the photograph taken in the Church of Christ the Consoler on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, United Kingdom. The image was taken in 1963 by the Reverend Kenneth F. Lord. As the figure appears to resemble a human, much speculation has been had regarding what type of person might be in the image. Most speculation by believers has concluded that it resembles a 16th century monk with a white shroud over his face, possibly to mask leprosy or another disfigurement. Others believe it looks like a plague doctor from the 16th and 17th centuries. Initial claims suggest that the figure would measure at 9 feet tall, but its feet are not visible, so it could easily be standing on a box, giving the impression of height. Some people thought the photo was due to double exposure, but photographic experts have concluded that the image is not the result of double exposure. So what was it, and why was it in a church? No one truly knows, but it's extremely frightening. What does it look like to you? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. Mystery Guest. On January 22nd, 1985, the Coventry Freemen organization and their guests stood in prayer during a dinner event. All the guests are still, and as it was a dark room, the photographer probably thought it would be the perfect time to allow for a longer than usual exposure to get enough light into the picture. Makes sense. Now, nothing was out of the ordinary at the time, but as people started to see the print of the picture, a mystery surfaced. Who was the robed figure standing near the end of one of the tables? No one had dressed up for the event, and no one remembers anyone standing there as they stood for prayer. The figure also seems to be taking part in the prayer, head slightly bowed, hands clasped in front. St Mary's, Coventry, Warwickshire is where the event was hosted. It has many legends of ghosts and paranormal activity, but I wonder why this being decided to join in prayer. It just gives me bad vibes, like evil lurks within it. And coming in at number 1 is the Young Boy. One of the most famous haunted houses in the United States is the Dutch Colonial House at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The haunting stems from the night of November 13th, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald Defoe ended the lives of all 6 members of his family. He was then arrested, convicted, and given 6 concurrent life sentences. In December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into the house and claimed that spooky things were happening. For example, George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which was the approximate time that Ronald committed his crimes. Kathy said she would feel a ghostly presence and be embraced by it. All of this and more caused the family to flee in fear after only staying in the house for 28 days, and honestly, I don't blame them. Due to this, demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the house and set up time-lapse infrared cameras and caught this photo. The picture wasn't made public until 3 years later when George Lutz appeared on the Merv Griffith Show in 1979. Believers of the haunting think that the picture is the ghost of the youngest Defoe son, John Matthew, who was 9 at the time. Others believed it's a staged photo, but despite its controversy, this picture is one of the most frightening images from the Amityville horror. Number 10. Royal Air Force Squadron. This photo, taken in 1919, was first published in 1975 by Sir Victor Goddard, a retired RFA officer. The photo is a group portrait of Victor's squadron, which had served in World War I at the HMS Daedalus training facility. This isn't a normal photo though, as an extra ghostly face appears in the photo. In the back of the airman positioned on the top row, 4th from the left, you can clearly see the face of another man. It's said to be the face of Freddie Jackson, an air mechanic who had accidentally died from an airplane propeller 2 days earlier. And let me just mention, his funeral had taken place on the day this photograph was taken. Members of the squadron easily recognized the face as Freddie's. I mean, it was his funeral, he just wanted to be a part of the photo. It has also been suggested that Freddie, unaware of his death, decided to show up for the group photo, which is just sad. Number 9. Combremere Abbey Library. In 1891, Cybele Corbett took a photo of the Combremere Abbey Library in Cheshire, England. Cybele was an amateur photographer who allegedly set up her camera and took this hour-long exposure while at the funeral of her brother-in-law, Lord Combremere, was taking place 4 miles from the home. When the plate was developed, the transparent image of a man sitting in one of the library chairs was noticed. Many of the staff said the image looked like the late 2nd Viscount, and the apparition happened to be sitting in Lord Combremere's favorite chair. So, you know, it's Obviously him. It's thought by some that a servant might have come into the room and sat briefly in the chair, thus creating the image, but this idea was refuted by members of Lord Combriere's household. Lord Combriere's father, the first Viscount, had been involved in a mysterious incident himself years earlier while serving as governor of Barbados, when he had the Chase vault opened and carefully examined in search of an explanation for the moving coffins there. Seems like him and his father have both had some paranormal experiences, both in life and death. Number 8. The Watcher of Corroboree Rock. The rock formation near Alice Springs, Australia, known as Corroboree Rock, is made of dolomite that was formed more than 800 million years ago, and it's considered a sacred site by the Arrernte Aboriginal people. With that much history behind it and that much importance assigned to it, it makes sense that there's someone or something that looks over it. That's why the spirit is called the Watcher of Corroboree Rock. Now, no one really knows exactly who or what it is, but one photo of it dates back to the 1950s. In either 1956 or 1959, reports vary, a minister from Adelaide snapped the photo during a visit to the rock formation, and it's been puzzling people ever since. According to the minister, Reverend R. Lance, there was no one around when the photograph was taken, however, but when he developed it, the ghostly figure now seen in the image appeared. It's kinda nice to know that there's something taking care and watching over that area, no? Number 7. Leeds General Infirmary. Now, why wouldn't there be a creepy ghost photo taken in a hospital? With many patients' lives ending and beginning there, those places are full of spirits. Now, this photo isn't an extremely well-known ghost photo, but it's still creepy nonetheless. This photo was taken at Leeds General Infirmary by Andrew Milburn. The photo shows what appears to be a ghost nurse or patient fleeing into a room in a hospital corridor. Andrew took the photo to show his girlfriend where he was in the hospital and did not mean to capture a ghost. He didn't know this ghost was in the photo until he reviewed it more closely. Andrew had always been skeptical about ghosts, but seeing this figure changed his mind, and honestly, that would change my mind too. Number 6. Whaley House. Known worldwide as the most haunted house in America, the Whaley House is recognized for its historical significance in Old Town San Diego. They do haunted tours on the property, and this family went on a tour and got their photo taken. In the photo, you can see the brown outline of someone or something in between the two adults. Now, there are multiple people this could be. One of the most infamous ghosts in San Diego is the spirit of Yankee Jim Robinson. Yankee Jim was hanged in the house in 1852 after being convicted of stealing horses. Thomas Whaley himself, who owned and lived in the house with his family years later, had said they could hear heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs. Visitors have reported cold spots and the feeling of their chest and throat tightening while in the home. Others claim to have seen Yankee Jim too, an apparition that appears and disappears when you get close. This ghost in the photo could also be Thomas Whaley himself. Today, and for many years, visitors of the house have reported seeing Thomas. One guest waved to a man she said she saw standing in the parlor. No one else could see the man, but when asked what he looked like, she described a man wearing period clothing that resembled Thomas. Adults too have seen him wearing a frock coat and pantaloons standing on the second-story landing, and others have seen his wife, Anna, usually floating about in the garden or in the downstairs room. Her ghost, which appears white and billowy, seems to just drift about and then disappears. So with so much ghost activity in that house, I am sure it's one of those spirits. Number 5. Tantallon Castle. Tantallon Castle dates back to the 14th century, stands on a remote headland near North Berwick, and was badly damaged in an attack by Oliver Cromwell's forces in 1651. A photo taken there shows a ghostly figure. The photo, taken by Christopher Anachin in 2009, still remains an unsolved mystery. It's a photo of a man in what appears to be 16th century clothes. It's known that no mannequins or costume guides are used within the castle, and experts have confirmed through analysis that there is no digital alterations at play. Even skeptics have been left baffled by the image after tests confirmed no technological trickery is at play. Psychologist Professor Richard Wiseman from the University of Hertfordshire, who studied the picture, said the figure appears to be in a period costume, but we know 100% that the Tantallon Castle is not the sort of place that has mannequins or costume guides. Seems like an old spirit just wanted to take a look outside. Number 4. Nottingham Galleries of Justice. One of the best ghostly sightings caught on film is this spooky black figure photographed by Simon Brown, who is a qualified parapsychologist. He was spending the day at the old Galleries of Justice with his brother and was simply taking photographs of the building. Although Simon says he didn't notice anything while taking the images, when he downloaded them onto his computer, he noticed what appeared to be a black figure shadow that seemed to have walked through a brick wall. Staff at the galleries have corroborated Simon's story, saying that they too have seen similar figures and have experienced similar paranormal encounters, but have not yet been able to capture anything on film. They've seen ghostly apparitions, dealt with poltergeist activity, and had doors slam on their own. Simon also mentioned when discussing the figure that it appeared to be in turn-of-the-century prisoner dress, dragging a leg behind him as though he was in chains. All I can say is creepy. Number 3. New home. Buying a new house is a fun and exciting time. But what if you bought a house that you didn't know was haunted? Seems like that's what happened to Michelle midwinter. Michelle had bought a new house in England and she took a photo of it to send to her friends and family. She'd gone outside, snapped a photo, and returned to the inside of the house when she noticed a face staring back at her in the bottom right window of the house. I'm sorry, when you zoom in, you can clearly see a nose, eyes, and shoulders, and the face of a man staring back at you. Now, Michelle didn't pack up her bags and leave right away, which I'll never understand. Instead, she posted the image online and was eventually contacted by a historian local in her area who believed that the apparition in the image could have been a man known as Old Man Kent, who was thought to be a suspect in a death back in 1860. Initially, Michelle dismissed the image as nothing more than reflections and refractions of light from the flowers outside her window, but following further paranormal sightings and activity within the house, such as cold spots and lights flickering, it seems like Michelle is now a believer. I can't believe having to live in a house like that. Number 2. Bedroom ghost. In 2005, a teenage girl had just gotten her first digital camera. She was messing around, experimenting with the features, and taking photos of her friend Tommy. The two photos were taken seconds apart. The first was taken with flash and the second was taken without. When taking the photo, the photographer and her friend were the only people in the room at the time, but there's clearly another person in the photo on the right. It looks like an older person wearing glasses, and I mean there's clearly someone there. The girl said that unusual things were always happening in her family's house as there were noises and things moved. Maybe it was the spirit who was doing all this and decided to reveal themselves. If I took a photo of a ghost in my bedroom though, I would never sleep there again. And coming in at number 1 is the ghost in the water. In 2014, Kim Davidson was swimming in a lake with a friend and their combined 3 children. They went to Murphy's Hole in Lochar River in Queensland, Australia. While there, they took a photograph. Normal, right? But when the photograph came out, there was a ghostly figure of a girl behind the group who looked like she'd been leering behind the family. They said that there was nothing in between them when the photo was taken, and on close examining the image, they realized it was a white face with dark eyes and 2 horns on either side of the head. Its fingers are on Kim's shoulder and on the small girl's right arm. Kim posted it on Facebook, and upon seeing the image, many comments were made, some saying that the 2 horns looked like 2 ponytails or buns. A fellow user shared the story of Doreen O'Sullivan, a girl who accidentally drowned in the same creek in the same spot in 1913. Her obituary was found in the Brisbane Courier, dated the 22nd of November 1913. The notice reads that Doreen O'Sullivan, aged 13 years, the oldest daughter of Mr. James O'Sullivan, was accidentally drowned whilst bathing in the Lockyer Creek on Friday afternoon. Nearly an hour elapsed before the body was recovered. Now, the spot, which has always been considered dangerous, is known as Murphy's Hole and is over 20 feet deep. Upon reading this, Kim recollected that they had experienced strange things that day while they were swimming in water. She felt someone's presence behind her, but she ignored it. Twice, someone in the water even grabbed her elder daughter's leg. This made Kim believe in the presence of a spirit in the water. By looking at the picture, she was convinced that the unknown face was that of Doreen. Kim got 2 paranormal experts to check out the photo, and after investigating the photograph carefully, they concluded that the shape of the image was that of a child.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next, terrifying encounters that will make you fear the circus. We have all the scariest clown-related content wrapped up into one video. Click the video now if you dare to be scared.